Coming up on Market to Market, the latest agricultural census reveals shifting demographics. Despite opposition, the world's largest solar power plant goes online. And California producers consider the future of farming without water. Those stories and market analysis with Darren Newsom next.
This is the Friday, February 21 edition of Market to Market, the weekly journal of rural America.
Hello, I'm Mike Pearson. Government and private reports this week revealed harsh winter weather is cooling the housing sector. According to the National Association of Realtors, sales of existing homes fell in January to a seasonally adjusted annual rate of 4.6 million units. That's down 5% from December and the worst tally in 18 months. Rising home values are contributing to the slump. The median sales price has risen over 10% in the past year to $189,000. Meanwhile, the Commerce Department reports U.S. builders started work on new homes at a seasonally adjusted annual rate of $880,000 in January, down 16% from the previous month. Applications for building permits, a barometer of future construction plans, also fell in January, marking their third month of decline. And the Builder Sentiment Index declined 10 points last month to 46. Any reading below 50 indicates builders believe conditions are more negative than positive, and January's tally was the lowest in 8 months. Rural America, of course, is not immune to the market forces that play in the rest of the economy. Last week, the Agriculture Department predicted net farm income will decline significantly in 2014. And this week, the government reported demographics are shifting in the heartland. Conducted by the National Agricultural Statistics Service since 1840, the Census of Agriculture is a complete count of U.S. farms and ranches and the people who operate them. According to the census, a farm is any place from which $1,000 of agricultural products were produced and sold, or normally would have been sold during the year. Here are some preliminary findings. In 2012, the United States had 2.1 million farms, down 4.3% from the last agricultural census in 2007. This continues a long-term trend of fewer farms. Between 2007 and 2012, the amount of land in farms fell from 922 million acres to 915 million acres. But the subtraction of less than 1% was the third smallest decline reflected in the census since 1950. In 2012, the average farm size was 434 acres. That's 3.8% larger than 2007, when the average farm was 418 acres. The number of mid-sized farms declined in number between 2007 and 2012. And the number of large, 1,000-plus acres, and very small, 1 to 9 acre farms did not change significantly in that time. The average age of principal farm operators was 58.3 years. That's up 2% since 2007, and it continues a 30-year trend of aging producers. Meanwhile, the number of beginning farmers, those on their current operation less than 10 years, declined 20% from 2007. Nearly 172,000 farmers had run their operations less than 5 years. The market values of crops, livestock, and total agricultural products in 2012 all soared to record highs. U.S. farms sold nearly $395 billion worth of agricultural products in 2012, up 33% from 2007. Nationally, the number of farms decreased in 34 states, but increased in 16. And in several southeastern and midwestern states, the decrease was statistically significant.
So when we talk about work requirements,
responding to the report, Agricultural Secretary Tom Vilsack said, "The preliminary data provides a snapshot of a strong rural America that has remained stable during difficult economic times. We have slowed significantly the loss of farmland, which has totaled 72 million acres since 1982. New tools provided in the 2014 Farm Bill will help further slow and reverse this trend." The Agriculture Department will release the full census later this spring. Pressure is building on President Obama to make a decision on the Keystone XL pipeline, which would funnel oil from Canada and North Dakota to refineries in Texas. But a Nebraska judge's decision this week all but guarantees the legal battle surrounding the controversial project will continue. At issue is a 2012 law that allowed Republican Governor Dave Heineman to approve the route through the Cornhusker State. That, in turn, gave Calgary-based TransCanada the right to use eminent domain on landowners who deny the company access to their property. The ruling was a victory for pipeline opponents, including environmentalists who say Keystone XL would carry dirty oil that contributes to global warming, and Nebraska ranchers and farmers who fear it could threaten local water supplies. Just about any effort to develop new sources of power these days is either heralded as a panacea or vilified as a threat to wildlife or the environment. And that was the case in the Mojave Desert this week, when the world's largest solar power plant went online. The Ivanpah Solar Electric Generating System formally opened on Thursday, making it the largest solar power plant in the world. The complex covers nearly 5 square miles in the Mojave Desert near the California-Nevada border and consists of 350,000 mirrors that are roughly the size of a garage door.
The solar heat that's reflected from the mirrors onto the towers produce steam and heat some water and produce steam. The steam turns the generator, and the generator in turn produces electricity.
The $2.2 billion system consists of 3 generating units capable of producing nearly 400 megawatts. That's enough electricity to power 140,000 homes. The project has been controversial since the cost of building and generating solar thermal energy is much more expensive than that of nuclear, natural gas, and coal-fired power plants. According to 2011 Energy Information Administration estimates, it costs $100 to generate a megawatt hour using conventional coal, while solar thermal power costs $261, or more than 2.5 times as much. Environmentalists fought construction of the facility because of the potential negative impact it would have on a population of desert tortoise that was listed as threatened in 1994. Government documents also show that dozens of dead birds have been found on the site with scorched and melted feathers. Currently, solar power accounts for less than 1% of the nation's generating capacity. But in 2012, the Obama administration established 17 solar energy zones, designating that 285,000 acres of public land in 6 southwestern states would serve as priority areas for commercial-scale solar development. Despite an especially cold and snowy winter in the upper Midwest, officials are optimistic that spring flooding will be minimal. In their latest spring outlook this week, several branches of the National Weather Service did not project significant flooding in most Midwestern waterways. And the risk of even minor flooding is below normal in many watersheds. That's a bit of a surprise considering the amount of snow blanketing the upper Midwest. Despite a brief warming trend earlier this week, parts of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa still have up to 3 feet of snow on the ground. Officials, however, say much of the snowfall has been offset by drought, and when it melts, much of it is expected to soak into the parched ground. And that's adding insult to injury for farmers in California, where water allocations this spring will be in acre inches instead of the customary measurement of acre feet. Andrew Bott examined the agricultural impact of 3 consecutive years of drought in the Golden State and filed this report.
When gas is $5, $6 a gallon, usually we can adjust, right? We could raise our price of hay. We could raise our price of doing tractor work. We could raise our price, we have a little construction business. We could raise that. But if it don't rain, how do you adjust that? You can't.
Frank Imhoff has spent his entire life along the hilly ranchlands of west central California. His cattle operation was passed down from his father, who took ownership from Frank's grandfather. And all throughout those 3 generations of Imhoffs, they've never seen anything like this.
It's all the way down. There ain't nothing there. There's grain that hasn't popped out yet. And there ain't enough moisture there to sustain that for very long, I wouldn't think. So is it the worst? Yeah, it's definitely the worst.
Imhoff's hundreds of acres of farmland, much of it used for hay production, are dry and fallow, following an unrelenting barrage of warm weather and bone-dry conditions.
Our daily average is 57 degrees, and we're at, what the hell are we at? 77 yesterday.
Frank's plight is emblematic of cattle ranchers throughout California, all suffering under the worst drought conditions in recorded history as they make tough decisions on culling their herds. Imhoff's additional grazing ground, within a stone's throw of the San Francisco Bay, often requires pumps to keep the water table from seeping in, but not this year.
My wife did not come from a farming background, and she thinks this is pretty close to the end.
The Golden State is a hotbed of extremely dry conditions, with more than 95% of California in some stage of drought. 70% of the state is categorized in either extreme or exceptional drought. More than 150 miles away from Imhoff's cattle, in the Sierra Nevada foothills, the massive dam at Lake McClure shows how severe California's situation has become for the region's entire water supply. A dramatic drop in the water level here has revealed a 1920s-era dam, usually tucked below hundreds of feet of lake water.
Our economy, 1/3 of it is driven by agriculture. Given our economy and our way of life here at Merced, it's, I think to look at this lake this low is heartbreaking is probably the word for it.
Mike Jensen with Merced Irrigation District points out that Lake McClure's role as a multi-purpose water reservoir serving California's Central Valley could be tasked to a breaking point in 2014.
We are going into what appears to be the third dry year. We've had 2 consecutive dry years in 2012 and 2013. And as of now, this is one of the driest years we've got on record for Merced Irrigation District. The lake capacity itself is 1 million acre feet, and we are down to less than 22% today.
Water now slowly seeping out of Lake McClure descends towards the Central Valley via the Merced River, before massive pumping stations throughout the valley irrigate farm fields filled with everything from lettuce to almond trees. California produces 1/3 of the nation's fruits and vegetables. For growers and processors like Jeff Marchini, it's a combination of focusing on both short-term shortages and long-term solutions.
Almonds are a permanent crop, but there's going to be a lot of ground that's fallowed this year because of a lack of water, and there's only X going around. So you're going to see growers take whatever allocation they have or whatever fine amount of water and use it maybe to keep their permanent crops alive. And fallow those rotational crops. So there's going to be a lot of things that are just not going to get planted.
Marchini's almond facility is still cleaning and processing 80 million pounds of fresh product annually, but his fields outside are carefully allocating precious moisture through pivot and drip irrigation. Marchini and other growers are concerned that farmers dealt with acre inches of water from the Merced Irrigation District will simply turn to their only other option, pumping from deep underground aquifers and further depleting the region's water table for generations to come.
We don't like pumping out of those aquifers unless we really have to. Why? Because it is a precious resource, and we know there's unknowns on how much exactly is out there.
Back upstream at Lake McClure, water officials know their hope of a seasonal snowpack recharge is dismal at best.
We're watching the weather as close as anybody, and it's frustrating. We still do have a couple of months of winter left, so things could change. We're not terribly optimistic at this point. We're planning for a dry year.
Lake McClure's water level is largely recharged from this famed valley, known as Yosemite National Park. But the conditions here have been so warm that hikers have soaked in 60-degree temperatures in January, as the tallest waterfall in North America is nothing more than a trickle. The promise of a snowpack recharge is almost non-existent. The nearby Hetch Hetchy Valley District serves 2.4 million Californians by pumping water from near Yosemite over the hills and west to San Francisco.
We should have a foot of grass out here right now, a foot of green grass.
But what do you have?
Nothing. 2 inches of nothing.
Ranchers like Frank Imhoff question whether the hard decisions he'll have to make on the farm will be required of nearby population centers.
This is San Francisco water ground. There's 2 reservoirs back here. There's Hetchy. The 2 million people that live in San Francisco are going to get drinking water. They're not going to waste an ounce of time for a farmer.
He made a point of showing our market-to-market crew what runs beneath his parched rangelands, a massive water pipe destined for coastal cities.
Here again, who's going to win this battle? This water, will it ever stop? If those dams like you saw yesterday are empty and we don't get snow, will this stop? And if it does, then what do those people do?
When President Obama visited California late last week, he promised livestock disaster support from Washington, but had a warning not just for California, but the entire American West in the 21st century.
To start building new infrastructure, to start having new plans, to calibrate the baseline that we're working off of. And everybody, from farmers to industry to residential areas to the north of California and the south of California and every place in between, as well as the entire western region, are going to have to start rethinking how we approach water for decades to come.
For Market to Market, I'm Andrew Bott.
Next, the Market to Market Report.
At its annual Agricultural Outlook Forum this week, USDA officials called for record U.S. corn and soybean yields this year and near-record yields for wheat. Nevertheless, grain prices moved higher. For the week, March wheat gained 11 cents, while the nearby corn contract moved 8 cents higher. Notions of diminished production in South America supported soybean prices this week, as the March contract gained 33 cents. Nearby meal followed suit with a gain of $5.80 per ton. In the softs, cotton's recent rally fizzled this week as the May contract lost 69 cents per hundredweight. In the dairy market, March Class 3 milk gained more than $1, while the deferred contract advanced by nearly $1.50 per hundred. Over in livestock, the April cattle contract gained 35 cents. Nearby feeders advanced by 23 cents, and the April lean hog contract gained $3.18. In the financials, the euro gained 3 basis points against the dollar. Crude oil advanced by $2 per barrel. COMEX gold improved by $5 per ounce, and the Goldman Sachs Commodity Index gained nearly 10 points to settle at 650 even. Here now to lend us his insight on these and other trends is one of our regular market analysts, Darren Newsom. Darren, welcome back.
Good to be back. Thanks, Mike.
Well, we're glad to have you, and it's been an interesting time in the wheat market. Talk to us a little bit about where things are headed here in the short term.
Short term, wheat market probably wants to go up. It's been down for so long. It seems to have turned a corner. We've got some buying coming into this market. We've got some domestic demand that's still helping to provide some support. So, if I look at the Chicago, Kansas City, and Minneapolis, all 3 contracts, all 3 markets look like they want to try to go up a little bit from here. Now, is it sustainable? Is it long term? No, because we still have all these supplies up in Canada, and once we get the transportation problems figured out, if that ever happens, then all that wheat's going to start to move. So short term, I think wheat's got the chance to move higher.
And short term, with the hang-up being transportation issues, we could see this strength a month, maybe 2. Is it winter transportation that's mainly the trouble?
I think that's the biggest thing right now, because again, we're not seeing great export numbers, so it looks like it's domestic, and it's just getting things moved around at this point. We've got solid spreads going on right now in all 3 markets, so it certainly looks like we've got a little bit of fundamental support. At some point, as we get to spring, if we ever get to spring, we're going to start focusing on the winter wheat, on the new crop winter wheat, what type of condition it comes out of dormancy, if this winter has caused any problems. It's too early for any of that talk yet. But again, once we get into spring, I think we'll hear more of it.
All right. Well, now let's take a look over at the corn market. Again, some recent strength. Let's talk old crop corn.
Okay.
Selling opportunity today?
We're probably pretty close. Corn market has been moving up. It's been a slow, grinding rally. This market really doesn't want to go up, but there's just enough support out there to push it higher. Now, a couple of interesting things that we've seen start to develop. As this non-commercial or as this investment-led rally, they've covered their short position and they've built a small long position. As this has pushed futures higher, basis and spreads are starting to weaken a little bit. This means that we're seeing those cash sales from last year's crop that really everyone was sitting tight, not wanting to move. We're starting to see that. We're starting to see those occur now. So basis is weakening, spreads are weakening. I think that's going to limit the amount that the old crop market can rally.
Okay, so we're probably getting near the top.
We're getting close. Maybe at best another 15, 20 cents, 25 cents on spillover support from beans. But by and large, I think the attention is going to start to shift to the new crop market.
All right, and new crop, we had a selling opportunity yet in corn?
I don't want to get too excited. We're still figuring the average price using the daily closes of the D's contract in February for insurance purposes. It looks like, again, we've got so long to go. We've got so much yet to have happen to this crop. I don't want to get overexcited about selling a bulk of it right now, but there's going to be an opportunity, and it might be short-lived as well. When this market moves up, spring weather problems, whatever the case might be, late entry into planting, whatever it could be, that we're going to have to take advantage of. We're going to have to jump on it. And then I think the market's going to get a little dicey by the time we get into the summer, late summer, and later on in the fall.
All right. Now let's take a look over at the soybean market. Old crop soybeans have been on a tear for about the past 2 weeks nearly. Are we to a point where farmers with old crop bean in the bins just get her to town and get rid of it?
I think we piece some in here. I still like the bean market. We're starting to see a little bit of basis weakness. I like the May-July future spread still showing a very strong inverse. This despite all this talk of record production in South America. We've got a lot of demand. We've got great demand for U.S. beans so far. Sales are well above what USDA is projecting. Shipments continue strong week in and week out. So we still need beans. And so I think if we feed this rally a little bit at a time, by the time we get to early spring or so, maybe mid-spring, we'll have cleaned out the bins and we'll be focusing again on the new crop market.
On the new crop side, we're also seeing a little spillover strength there, all based on the downturn in the weather in South America. Is that what we're seeing?
I think to a certain degree, yes. We're seeing that 90 million metric ton estimate for Brazilian production alone start to be whittled back a little bit. That tends to happen. Their weather hasn't been too favorable here the last few weeks. So that's providing a little bit of support in the new crop soybean market. Plus, I just really think that we haven't completely figured out how tight the old crop market is. And so we don't really know what we're carrying forward into the new crop and if we have any problems. If we plant more corn acres, all these things that could happen, I think is going to keep a floor underneath new crop beans for now.
And give you a better selling opportunity later
I think so. Better selling opportunity later for both corn and soybeans.
Okay. Let's take a look over at the protein market. We're seeing fat cattle continue to show a lot of strength. Where do you see this market headed? We had the cattle on feed report today. Any surprises?
No real surprises. As we look at the numbers, I think on feed was down 3% from last year. Placements were up 9% from a year ago. So I think this is the trend that we're going to start to see: larger placements and on feed for now continuing to lag last year. This keeps the focus on the tight supply and demand situation that we have in front of us. Longer term, it's probably going to start to get a little bit bearish, but short term still looks like it's well supported. As far as the April cattle contract goes, I like the way it sets up against the June, continues to indicate the cash market should stay strong, but I really need to see the April contract go to a new high to extend this rally that it's on. Had a nice close this past week, but now we have to see it push higher on the weekly chart as well. So get that done, get that out of the way, and I think the market could continue to run a little bit.
Now, we were talking earlier about the impact of drought in California, talking to some ranchers. There was a report out today, National closed a packing plant in California. Are these going to have big impacts on the fed cattle market, do you think, or are rather localized?
I think it's going to be localized, but if you have enough of them put together, then it starts to make a bigger ripple. So, it's like throwing one stone in versus a handful of stones in. At some point, it's going to make a pretty good splash. So, right now, I would say it's more of a localized. It's going to change the local market, but traders as a whole are going to be looking at this thing because the supply-demand situation remains tight.
All right, and now the strength going to continue to support the feeder cattle even with corn at that 450 mark level? I
think so. We haven't seen enough of a rally in the corn market to really cool things a great deal in feeder cattle. I think there's going to still be demand, particularly if we're going to start upping placements again. I think there's going to stay pretty good demand for the feeder cattle market, and that's going to help push it higher as well.
All right. Now let's take a look over at the hog market. That April on fire this week, up $3.18 17 cents. What happened?
Well, and this is a meteorological term, okay? This isn't my term. We had this next weather system that moved through this week, this Texas hooker that moved through, and I don't know what that means in weather terms, but that's what they called it. And I think that caused a lot of concern as far as getting hogs moved to market. So, again, there was a short-term fear of supplies. We saw the April contract take off. Cash went with it. We've got good demand still. So, all things have come together to really help pull the lean hog market higher. Looks like it's going to stay around at least for a little while.
You think this 98, 97, high 97s is going to be there in April for a week or so?
We have to be careful with this because this could be a normal weather spike high, some sort of spike rally. So we have to be very careful. But I do think it's got some staying power. Again, April gained on June, indicating there's some support from the cash market. We just have to make sure that we don't lose it, that it just spikes up and then falls right back once the weather clears.
Now, as we look longer term in the hog market, we have seen incredible values out there, June, July, looking over the summer months. Is there still room to run in that as pork is a discount value to beef in the grocer's meat
It's
case?
possible, but I would be very concerned about the livestock, all the meat markets at some point. We're going to want to get some sales on because, we're going to start increasing our numbers again. And at that point, supply concerns are going to start looking forward, and those concerns are going to start growing a little less. So, we see some profitable numbers out there. I think we're going to have to start taking them as we start looking ahead towards those summer and fall contracts.
Let's go ahead. This will be a time to maybe...
I think so. Start piecing some in. Never any harm in doing that, particularly if they're at profitable levels.
All right. Now, the other thing that has really been on a surprising rally over the past couple weeks has been crude oil. Where is that going?
Well, the crude oil market, this is the time of year for crude oil to rally. I mean, we've got a lot of commercial buying coming in. Everyone's getting they're getting ready for the driving season that is theoretically going to start as soon as the snow stops falling and the ice quits littering the interstates. So we're going to see increased driving. So this, you get into February, and from February on, you see the market rally because of this seasonal buying.
All right, increasing plus. Thank you so much, Darren. Really appreciate it. That wraps up this edition of Market to Market, but you can find expanded market analysis as well as streaming video of our program free at our website. Now, we want to let you know that Market to Market may be airing in some different time slots and in some cases even on different channels over the next few weeks due to PBS fundraising activities. We really want you to check your local listings for details. And if you value programs like Market to Market, please consider making a pledge and investing in a service that provides you with accurate information and timely market analysis. We do appreciate your support. And until next time, thanks for watching. Have a great week.
Market to Market is a production of Iowa Public Television, which is solely responsible for its content.